Ain't nothing in this world for free. You can't slow down, you can't hold back. Oh, you know, I wish I could. 'Cause there ain't no rest for the wicked until we close our eyes for good. What do you think, Taylor? I got the right tool for the job here?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Maybe, yeah.
You know everything. You don't want to tell. Yeah, if I can get this thing on the lip, if this is sharp enough to get where I gotta go, we'll see. Come with me now. I'm gonna show you how to walk. Come with me now. I'm gonna take you down. Come with me now. Whoa, I don't know. What do you think? Watch your hand.
Yeah.
That's not a real good bite. Nah. Not that one. I have to get something else. Get one of my old wheel bearing poppers out of there. I might have to weld a bar across it and tap it out. Yep. Need something thinner. Okay guys, that is how you knock out the bearing races. The old ones. Now the way you do the new ones is just the opposite. But the trick here is getting the right tools to put them in flat and level. You do not want to cock these races sideways while you're putting them in. You do not want to do that. The trick with these bearings, guys, getting these collars in straight, is they never actually go in straight. They just never do. So what you do is you start them, and then you look at them, and you see where they're straight and where they're not, and you adjust accordingly. Yep. See, this is the high side now, so now that that's high, I'm going to lean that way. Now this is high now, I'm going to come back. There we go. Now we got the race in the frame. I'm going to turn this over the other way and get a smaller diameter and drive it down even farther. This edge here will just catch that steel lip. I'm not using this cone to go down in the race like that. I'm not coning down into it. I'm not doing that. I'm just catching it right on the edge like that. Until we close our eyes for good. Yeah, see where that surface started digging? So I need the next size down that's just one size smaller than that. We'll use this one. Yep, there it is. That's it. We hit home base. Money don't grow on trees. Hey, we got mouths to feed and ain't nothing in this world for free. So look here, guys. See that old green paint that the factory had before they pressed the races in? There's no sense bothering it. I'll just leave it there because those tolerances and those sizes are already all set. That's why I left the races in before I bead blasted the frame. If you go bead blasting a whole bunch of paint and then a whole bunch of surface rust and a whole bunch of surface metal out of there, you don't have as tight a squeeze on your race, and that's not good for other reasons. So I just leave all that junk in there. Bead blast, paint, work, powder coat, all around it, whatever I'm going to do. And then I do the races last, and I put them right back in where they came out of. Leave those surfaces tight. You don't want those things moving around. So I'm going to whack it one good time like this and call it a day. Never, ever, 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 ever hit these like this. Or hit them like this. They're not made that way. They're made to get hit like this. Okay, that looks like it worked. Drove the race in a little bit past level, a little bit into what we'd call a recession. It's down in the frame. I'm going to tap it one time good and hard. It is aluminum, so hopefully you're not messing up the race. That's it. That felt solid to me, so I'm going to call that a day. If it's not 100% down in, it's okay, because when you torque the bearing, then you ride the bike. You do a first service. Anytime you build a bike, you do a first service just like a brand new bike. Why do you do a first service? All the bearings, all the oil, everything in the bike's breaking in. Well, those races will break into that frame. When that bearing's in there, like this, let's say that race isn't 100% seated and it's sitting in there like that. Well, as you ride it, it'll adjust and it'll force itself to be where it wants to be. So then you wind up with play and slop in the front end. So you go back and retorque your triple clamps, and the second time you retorque them, you're done. Then you're settled. So there you go. It's also why you never, ever, ever, ever race a bike without riding it first, because you got to break those bearings in, get those seated, give that race a chance to settle into that frame, and then go back a second time later and retorque it. Some real high quality, high pressure grease to put in the rollers, and then I put some of this old junk on top. Why is that junk grease good to put on top of a lower bearing like that? It's a lower temperature grease, and when you're riding around on a hot August or July summer day, that grease will actually melt and it will roll down into those bearings. So if we go out in the springtime on that high pressure grease and we're rocking and rolling and killing it, and we do 4 or 5 race weekends, and then maybe those bearings are starting to dry up a little bit. Well, it's a hot summertime, so you got some cheaper grease on top that will run down in there. Because I'm not going back in these bearings again until next winter. I'm not. It's going to be the middle of the summer. I'm going to be making money. I'm going to be busy racing, traveling all around the country, pissing off liberals and shooting guns, whatever I got to do. I do not have time to wait till next winter to take this bike apart again. So I put some of this cheap grease up here, and then go race, and then in the middle of the summer when I'm riding, that'll get hot, engine heat and summer sunlight, and then that'll re-lube itself and I'll keep going. And next winter I'll take that bearing out, it'll be beautiful. That upper bearing, I just used the better high quality pressure stuff. The high pressure stuff that came in that Pivot Works kit's what I'm using, but you can use any high pressure quality wheel bearing grease. You just don't want that cheap hardware store crap like I put there. This is a good, better grease for the top, because there's nothing above it to melt down into it like the bottom one. So the best you do with the top bearing is give it plenty of good quality grease and rock and roll. All right, let's set this in. These triple clamps were bead blasted and then cleaned with alcohol, and then after they were cleaned with alcohol, then they were spray painted aluminum color. So yeah, the aluminum color will wear off with the washing and the mud, but it's not going to look funny because it's got aluminum under it. It's going to wear together. Okay guys, you want to make sure you torque this really, really tight. You want to make sure you have a lot of torque on this because it will loosen. Those races will move like we talked about, and you want to make sure you really got this this seal down in there. See that rubber seal sticking up pretty high? You want to get that pressed down in there and keep the dirt out as much as possible. So you don't want to be timid about this. You want to put some real pressure on it. You're not going to hurt that bearing. That bearing's strong enough to take the weight of the motorcycle and the weight of your body and fly 30 foot through the air and case a set of triples, okay? If that bearing can handle that kind of load, you're not going to hurt it with a wrench. So don't be a sissy. Put some pressure on it, make it tight, and get that seal to go down and keep the dirt out. Okay? Okay. It does feel a little tight, but you know what? I'm okay with a little tight. When you're beating up on it, racing on it, it'll loosen up, it'll be good. And I throw a little grease on those threads too. You can't see it in the camera, but I put a little grease on those threads. Cheap grease. Now I'm not going to torque this nut until after I build the front end. There's no reason to torque this nut because we don't have the front end together. I'm just going to put it on by hand, and then that'll be one of the last things I torque later. But there you go. That's the front end in, ready for the forks. Thanks for coming to this Cycle for Life video, guys. We greatly do appreciate it. We're not doing this to make money. This isn't a financial thing. I've got day work, full-time job. But please do like, share, and subscribe, and click the notification button because it helps us get this information in front of other people. And you never know. Maybe a motorcycle will save their life too. So wear your helmets, and no matter how fast you choose to ride, please ride safe. God bless.